Rich, oh, Rich is a therapist in practice at Brentwood Counseling Associates. For 20 years, Rich lived and worked in some of the more challenged communities in the United States, such as the Navajo Reservation, rural East Tennessee, North Chicago. His constant interaction with trauma, death, and chronic illnesses led him to better understand how systemic trauma and injustice affects at the personal and interpersonal level. Rich and his family moved from Chicago to Nashville in 2019 to complete a master's degree in human development counseling at Vanderbilt University. These days, Rich is committed to helping adults, individuals and couples, experience freedom, healing, and restoration in all areas of life, including individuals and families living through cancer diagnoses and treatment, as well as those seeking healing from religious and spiritual trauma and adverse religious experiences. Would you join me in welcoming Rich Gorman?
I just wanted to point out that we are looking for new board members. This organization doesn't run itself, and Melissa can't do everything, so we have a really active working board. I'm just going to say it's a lot of fun. Look at the flyer. Think about if you want to serve the organization more, even if not on the board, on one of the committees, and we would welcome you.
Sorry, Kathy, I totally forgot about that. Let's welcome Rich again.
Kathy, I got you. All right, you bet. All right, cool. Well, it's great to be with you here today. My name is Rich Gorman, as Michael was saying, and I get to be one of the therapists at Brentwood Counseling Associates. We actually have a table right over here, and Brentwood Counseling has been there for 40 years. It's one of the oldest established counseling practices in the area, and we work with kiddos from as young as 5 all the way up through the lifespan, and we would love to know how we can support you and the work that you're doing with your clients. And so if there's any questions you have about us and the work we're doing and ways that we can support you, just let us know. You can talk to me afterwards. There's Jay and Stephanie and Chris right over here at this table. It's like the BCA table, and they'll be glad to help you. So yeah, well, now before we launch kind of ever so valiantly into this topic, I just want to take a moment and just name that there's a lot of us here in this room who have our own experiences with cancer. Either we have been diagnosed or a loved one has been diagnosed, and we've been on that journey as chaotic as it can be. So for many of us here, this is a tender topic, and there may be some raw spots that maybe get rubbed a little bit today. And so before we continue on, I just invite you, if you have had your own experience with cancer, that you have been diagnosed, a loved one has been diagnosed, and you've accompanied someone along that journey, would you please stand or raise your hand, one or the other? Wow. So I just want, for those of us who are raising our hands, just look around for a minute and just take note. And so as we're walking through this today, I just want to remind us all that we're not alone. This is a room of credible witnesses who can bear witness to your experience as you bear witness to theirs, and mine as well. My journey into this work began with these two people. This is my dad, down here in the bottom left, and my sister with the amazing shirt in the top right. And they were both diagnosed with cancer. My dad in May of 2005 diagnosed with small cell lung cancer, and he died in February of 2006. And then my sister with the same exact kind of cancer in September of 2020, and she died the day after Thanksgiving that same year. And for both of them, there were just a few months between diagnosis and death. So along with many of you, this arena for me is very personal and very sacred. And my hope today is that just to kind of share dispatches along the cancer journey with you from the standpoint of the lived life of clients who have been diagnosed with cancer, caregivers and families as well, and also from a standpoint of a clinician as we're engaged in this journey with clients. Now, there's only so much that we can cover in a 45-minute presentation, and so we could be up here for days talking about all the ins and outs, and so there's going to be a lot that's going to be left out, and so I hope to have a little bit of a Q&A session at the end here. But yeah, and another caveat is there are few predictable paths when it comes to cancer. And so for everything we talk about, there are a lot of exceptions. And so what I'm going to do is hope to share just some broad kind of stops along the journey. And I want to frame this in terms of a cancer journey, beginning with diagnosis, going to the beginning of treatment, and then eventually what I call the middle passage, which is this long, hard slog in the middle, and then going into the end of treatment. And like all stage theories, I was trained at HDC at Vanderbilt, and stage theories were like, yeah, big deal. And they look really clean, and they look awesome and fun, not fun, but they look awesome. They've never been fun, but they're real messy, you know. And so, so this is kind of providing a framework for us. But that's where we're at. All right, so we're going to begin with diagnosis. What is diagnosis like for a new cancer patient? Well, many clients find their way to me or to you, to our counseling offices, shortly after meeting with their doctor and hearing something to the effect of, quote, "We have discovered that you have glioblastoma. What you have is a malignancy called melanoma or sarcoma or leukemia." But whether they hear the terms carcinoma, sarcoma, melanoma, lymphoma, or leukemia, it all breaks down to this one dreaded phrase, which is, you have cancer. Now, what they just heard is some variation of this. And just for a minute, if you can imagine from your own story or others, how did they just interpret this? What question do you think might have just come up in their mind from them front and center? What does this mean? Longevity? Am I going to die? That's the primary question that clients come in with. Am I going to die? Now, thankfully, for many, cancer is not a death sentence. There are more people living longer and better today with cancer than ever before. Mortality rates fell in the U.S. between 29% between 1991 and 2017. And today, the 5-year survival rates for the two most common types of cancer, which are breast cancer and prostate cancer, are up by 90%. So the reality is that there's greater chances of living longer and better today with cancer than ever before. But even still, the existential dread that comes with this diagnosis is very real for clients. And for starters, the diagnostic process often is just very traumatizing in and of itself. The way it often happens, again, not all the time, but often it happens, is, clients will go into their doctors with either just a regular annual test or some kind of physical discomfort or something they'll go in to get checked out with their doctor. And so the doctor will run some tests and then call back and say, there's some tests that came back with some abnormalities and we have some questions. And so we want to come back in and run a few more tests and just see what's going on. And so I think we can work you in about 3 weeks. Well, yeah, if you're lucky, right? And so what do you think is going through the mind of that person in those 3 weeks? Right? What is going on? What's happening? What does this mean? So we begin this treadmill of worry and wait and worry and wait. And one of the things it reminds me of is if you're like in your house asleep at night and you hear a loud noise and you wake up and you're kind of startled and you're thinking like, wait a minute, what is that? What was that noise? What did I just hear? Is it dangerous? Is this a threat? Is this a threat? Is this a threat? And that's what comes up. Is this a threat? Is this a threat? Am I in danger? And so for 3 or 4 weeks, if a lot of times if clients are lucky, they're just left with this wondering and waiting and wondering and waiting. And then clients will come back in and there's more tests. There may be a biopsy. And then we're going to wait some more. Wait another few weeks. Then we come in, and the whole time this churn is going. Is this dangerous? Is this a threat? Then there may be more tests. Then there may be surgeries. Now, by the time patients have been officially diagnosed, they've often been in the ocean of uncertainty and panic for several months. And once there is a diagnosis of malignancy, the hurry up and wait is followed by this frantic rush of doctors and options and decisions and choices. And all of a sudden, this runaway train just kind of takes off, and the clients are left just completely destabilized and overwhelmed by this whole brave new world that they found themselves in. It's a little bit like the apex of a roller coaster. If you've ever been on a roller coaster, like click, 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 click. You get up to the top, it's really slow, really slow, really, really slow. What's going to happen? And then boom, everything goes. And the feeling a lot of clients will report is that they feel completely out of control, because they're now having to relinquish control of their lives to oncologists, to a care team who are doing a wonderful job, but are often making decisions that don't make sense, are just aren't really clear. And when clients or new cancer patients can't find clarity, or when it's not making sense from their doctors, where do you think they might go to find the answers? Dr. Google, right? Dr. Google and Nurse Reddit is always right there to contribute to the confusion. And so I will often tell clients, okay, this is universally a bad idea, but they're going to do it. They're going to do it anyway. And they're just trying to find clarity in whatever way they can. And so what I typically do is assume that they're going to do it and just prepare them for what they're going to find, which typically is more confusion. But I like to remind them that, look, nobody in the history of the world has been diagnosed with this form of cancer at this stage. A person who has your story, your background, your genetics, your body chemistry, you are an N of one. And so when you go look at the numbers and the percentages and all that stuff, it's really actually not going to be very helpful, because this is really an individual journey, and the numbers begin to break down. So another important part of this uncertain future that they've now found themselves in is clients now have been launched into the confusing matrix of the medical industrial complex. And so all of the managed care and specialized care, insurance, which, given in and of itself is absolutely daunting under the best of circumstances. But you add what could be potentially a terminal diagnosis on top of it, and it's completely overwhelming. And clients trying to make sense and navigate the system is really a problem and a challenge, and creates more challenges. And then on top of this, the financial pressures now begin to mount. And so, and they can be immense and become even more immense as we go. And the cruel irony is that the moment that clients begin to feel the mounting financial pressure, often their income is reduced because they're not able to work as much. Sometimes families go from 2 incomes to 1 income. And this is a relentless pressure throughout the entire journey. The bills, the financial pressures create a lot of problems. Now, keep in mind, this is just the diagnostic process. We have not gotten into treatment, but eventually, treatment begins. Now, the beginning of treatment is often accompanied by a sense of energy and direction. After months of free fall and trying to figure out, at least we now have a path and a direction. We know where we're going. We know what we're going to do. We know what our calendar is going to be like. I know that every third week, Monday and Thursday, I'm going to be at the oncologist's office. I'm going to be at the hospital for 6 hours. And I know it. So now we have order to our life. And so there's some energy, sense of direction. There's a plan of attack. But even though there's this kind of sense of certainty and direction, still there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of pressure. How will I respond to chemo? What's my body going to do? Will I get sick? Will I lose my hair? What if a mastectomy is necessary? What will the radiation do to me? Will it cause skin burns? What will they discover when they do surgery? What's going to happen to my body when the process starts? And these questions are all unanswerable. We just don't know. And that's the real challenge of the cancer journey, is that so much we just don't know until we get started. We don't know how your body is going to respond. We don't know what's going to happen. And it's a real big challenge. But perhaps the most pressing question is it going to work? And that's another thing, we just don't know. And so a lot of times what happens is we start treatment, oncologists make their decisions and choices, and we begin treatment. And then in 3 months, we're going to come back for a scan. 6 months, we're going to come back for a scan and just see if it's working. So we're embarking on this huge endeavor without any securities at all, any guarantees that this is going to work. So this is the world of a client who has been newly diagnosed and recently started treatment. So as a therapist, as clinicians, what do we do? How do we come alongside clients who are in this stage of care and dealing with all of these different dynamics and cross currents? So as a therapist, I kind of look at this in stages as well. And the first step is to join and stabilize, right? Like everything's kind of chaotic and crazy. And to be that steady, non-anxious presence that's able to kind of engage with them, to able to be present. And one of the ways that I think about it is I just got to get in the boat. And they got to know that I'm in the boat, and they got to know I'm not going to go anywhere, and they got to know that I'm there with them in the middle of this. But the challenge is that the boat, for me at least, the boat often looks like this, and trying to get in it is really, really difficult and really challenging. And the cancer journey itself kind of mirrors a lot of what whitewater rafting is like. So if you've ever been whitewater rafting, right, there's a lot of twists and turns, and around one turn, right, it's like chaotic and crazy. Level 5 rapids feels very dangerous and threatening, and it's completely out of control, and you just got to try to get through it. And then you come around another curve, and guess what? It's calm and stable. Oh, okay, things are okay. And then we have another twist, and guess what? We're back into chaos. And so the cancer journey a lot of times is like that for clients. And as a clinician, it is so much of like, okay, let's just adjust and adapt and be really flexible with what's going on with clients as they're going through this. And so, the first thing I do is introduce our good friend, the window of tolerance. Thank you, Dr. Dan, for the window of tolerance. And so most clients, can y'all hear me if I step away? I'm guessing you can. I know my kids can. So they choose not to, right? This is a safe space, right? Can I share? All right. So for the most part, clients have been living for months up in the red or down in the gray, right? And so one of the first order of business is, and kind of the guiding kind of engagement all the way through this thing, is how to help them get from hyperarousal and get back down into the window of tolerance where they can navigate the stress, the uncertainty, and the anxiety and live within that. Because one of the things we want to do is try to get that frontal cortex back online so that they can create meaning that's going to serve them well through the process. Because the meaning that has been created out of this pretty much is catastrophizing, going to worst case scenario, all the uncertainties and the fears and the panic. And if we can get them settled down, help them settle down, then we can begin to look at some generative meanings in ways that they can make sense of all of that's going on. And so the first step, of course, is rapport. Semester 1. Training, right? Rapport, therapeutic alliance, hello. So this is really the first order of business. And it is really so incredibly important. It's incredibly important with every client, regardless of where they're coming from or what they're coming with. But with cancer clients, it's really, really important to build this and stay on this rapport and building this therapeutic alliance because things change so much and so fast and so often. Another thing is it is really incredibly important that we understand their web of belonging, their loved ones, the people who are with them in this as well. Cancer is a medical diagnosis for sure, but it's also an emotional diagnosis. It's a spiritual diagnosis, and it does not affect just the person diagnosed. It affects everybody involved. And one of the great burdens that I find in my clients that they bring is not how is this going to affect me, although that's there as well, but how is this going to affect my kids? How is this going to affect my partner, my spouse? What is it going to mean for them? And so part of getting in the boat is not getting in the boat with just the client, but getting in the boat with the entire family system and the web of belonging. And the more they know that I get that and that we get that, the better that and stronger that rapport is going to be. Okay, so that's the first step is rapport. And then second is we got to build some skills to try to get back into the green. And so this early phase, we want to go really hard and really fast and try to build these skills as fast as possible. I know it's not what we try to do as therapists, but things tend to change really fast. And so the quicker we can get this base of skills down, the more it gives us to kind of work on as we go through the treatment. The first thing, focused breath work. So a lot of mindfulness approaches in this. And the important thing is to slow everything down. Everything's been really fast, really chaotic, really uncertain. And so if we can engage the diaphragm, slow everything down, it helps to take that stress response and begin to dial it down just a little by little by little. And I found that counted breathing of some kind typically works very well. Either box breathing, which is the 4-4-4-4, or 4-7-8 breathing. And the reason is because the rumination and the constant churn of the mind is just on hyperdrive. And so what the counting does is it gives them something to really anchor to. And so clients will typically report that, man, the counting really helps because it allows me to anchor something. And so, and again, every client is different, but I often will start a morning routine of just a large glass of water. We wake up dehydrated. Hydrating is typically pretty good. Large glass of water, and then 10 reps, which is one round of 4-7-8 breathing. In 4, hold for 7, out for 8, slow, and then 4 to 8. So hold 4, out 8. And and clients report back that if it's relaxing and beginning to kind of build that emotional resilience with that. Then we try to move to 3 times a day, building that emotional resilience and expanding that window of tolerance. Next thing is focusing on the present moment. So when we're under significant duress, our minds do 2 things really, really good. And they do it all on their own, which is our minds get really freaked out about the uncertain future, way out here, whoa, and then get really tangled up in all the shoulda, woulda, couldas of the past, right? But if we're out here and we're back here, where are we not? Right here, right? And so I work with clients and I'm like, right here is where your power is. And if we can get you right here, then you can begin to work with your situation because you can't change anything out here or back here. We're just going to work in right here, right now. And so what I'll do typically very simply was with the breath work, the 3 times a day breath work, add in daily check-ins. Okay, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you doing? And again, this is beginning to build that skill, those resiliences of being able to be in the present moment. Next step, cognitive flexibility. I rely a lot on acceptance and commitment therapy with a lot of these skills. Some of you may have picked up on that, so ACT has been very helpful. But these skills, you can find these in DBT. You can find them in mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. You can find them in a lot of different places. But yeah, cognitive flexibility, and that's basically identifying the catastrophic narrative and just creating some alternatives. Like, let it be what it is. Don't challenge that or fight that. You know, those catastrophic thoughts are kind of like the Black Panther suit. Anybody seen Black Panther? Well, if you attack Black Panther suit, right, straight on, what happens? Strong. It comes back at you twice as strong. And so I have clients watch Black Panther, and then we talk about that. But maybe not, but it's a great movie, by the way. So anyway, so yeah, where in the world was I? But anyway, cognitive diffusion, creating alternative narratives that are going to serve someone better in the midst of this. And then emotional acceptance. Emotional acceptance of being able to kind of identify those emotions, let them ventilate through, try not to get hooked by them, but you're creating space, you're turning towards it, creating space and engaging with it. Part of the emotional acceptance is what our good friend Tara Brach, anybody? Tara Brach fans? Yeah, calls radical acceptance. As we're getting the window of tolerance back online, we begin to work towards this idea of radical acceptance, accepting this new reality, what it is, what it means. Let's create the meaning that's going to serve you well. So she has a meditation framework that's called RAIN. I'm sure some of us are familiar with it. Recognize what's going on, allow it to be, investigate what does it mean, what's the message that it's bringing to you, and then nurture yourself in it. Like, there's no shame in this. Just nurture yourself. Treat yourself with kindness in that. But yeah, so we're trying to help clients get some critical distance from their experience, and so they can engage it well, and to get them back in that window of tolerance. So yeah. So any questions on that so far? All right, good. We'll have questions for later. Just felt the need to do that. All right, now we're into phase 2. Let's say we've built really good rapport, skills are going really well, and there's some sense of continuity and consistency there. We go into phase 2, which I call accompany and maintain. So as treatment begins, again, there can be this initial kind of sense of energy, resolve, like we're going to get this thing, we're going to go after it. A lot of times there's a lot of hope language around this, which is great, but often that sense of energy and resolve begins to wear off, and the reality of this long, hard slog begins to set in. And the long, hard slog involves a lot of pain, a lot of uncertainty. The effects of the chemo begin to set in. And for every single client and every single patient, this could break a million different ways. We just don't know. And so some clients, they are able to tolerate the treatment well. And then some, it really, really, creates a lot of problems. And sometimes the names of the medicines don't help. So there's one that's used for breast cancer that's called the Red Devil. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, that's not helping anybody to call it that. It's like a bright red color, so that's why they call it that. Clients typically have a really hard time tolerating that, but that's kind of is what it is. But the initial resolve begins to give way, and the treatment begins to take a toll. And this is what I call the middle passage. Like, this is where things get really, really tough and really, really challenging. In this phase, 70% of clients in various studies report clinical levels of stress and anxiety. I want to know who the 30% are who don't. 60% report overwhelming fatigue, cognitive issues, and 16% report suffering clinically significant depression. And here's some commentary. There's a really good book, new one that came out by Cynthia Hayes called The Big Ordeal, and it tells the story, journey of cancer patients coming through it. And for clients or for clinicians, I think it's a good primer on what this looks like. But some of the quotes from her book are this. One client said, "The fatigue is incredible. I lost 4.5 days to fatigue so severe that I slept the entire time. I just couldn't get enough energy together to get out of bed. I'm pretty committed to my synagogue, but I couldn't even make it to services for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the most important day of the year. I slept practically 24 hours. I was so weak from the chemo." Someone else said, "I was used to being fairly sharp, picking up on things quickly, but that was not the case in treatment. I couldn't remember things when talking to people. I had problems following conversations and frequently asked people to repeat things. When I told my doctor I had 3 questions for him, but after the first one I couldn't remember the other 2, he told me it was the chemo. It's so frustrating, particularly at work where I have to manage other people, particularly at work." So life doesn't stop, right? And then Jillian, who's 38, said, "The very first chemo threw me into menopause overnight when I was not yet even in perimenopause. That was the first shock. Then came the chemo brain. The keys would be in the refrigerator, or I'd have to put the toast, or I'd have put the toast away in the cabinet. Really wacky stuff. And I became repetitive and unable to process thoughts as fast as I used to. I was always a little flighty, so most people didn't notice much, but I did. I felt so old." So treatment can tip people into depression, suicidality, extreme fluctuations in emotions. And so safety planning can be really important during this phase. And so it's something to just kind of keep an eye on if we're beginning to tip into dangerous territory. Also, there can be a significant loss of identity. One patient said, "I was someone who could work all night and be strong the next day, but the fatigue was overwhelming. When you have the sense that you're not able to rely on yourself anymore, it's disconcerting. Where are you? Who are you if you don't have that?" So the middle passage often comes with a loss of identity, loss of dignity, loss of physical and our cognitive function. And this is the middle passage. And during this time, yep.
I'm sorry if you're gonna get to this in a minute. I'm guessing you might,
Okay. Do you want to go ahead? Do you want to wait and see, or you want to?
well, it has to do with the use of the phrase "the middle passage" and just
Okay.
understanding the history of that phrase,
Okay.
of going from freedom to slavery,
Okay.
and how that can, do we see a connection between the history of all freedom to all slavery and
not everyone makes it through the middle passage.
Right, right.
There's death. You know, so that part makes sense to me. Is there another way in which the endpoint is similar?
That's a great question, and thanks for mentioning the middle passage, because it is a weird fit given the historical connotation that's in the whole historical reality that's involved with that. But the idea of life being confining, incredibly limiting, and death is a very real experience for cancer patients. But we do get to end of treatment. So, if you just, yeah, maybe.
Well, maybe, it could be, but at least it's possible that there would be a happy ending, whereas with the original middle passage, there wasn't really.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's really important. So, in this point, it's really, really important that we begin to expand and pay attention to care for caregivers. You know, life doesn't stop for others, right? And a lot of times people who are in treatment, life doesn't stop for them as well. And bills keep coming. Homework still needs to be done. There's often Herculean efforts to try to keep things normal for the kids. And often what I'll see with families is they'll try to keep kids super busy to try to keep them kind of diverted a little bit, to keep them occupied. And which I get that, but sometimes what can happen is clients will get so over busy that it becomes more stressful down the road because they're trying to manage cancer. And I've got to get, Billy to piano, and I got to get Sally to soccer, and we've got to go to drums, and so it's just a lot. And so trying to help them to kind of really consider those decisions and why they're making those decisions is really important. And clients often report that the weight and the heaviness inside the home is really palpable. Having an illness of this kind inside the home really changes the dynamics and the feel of home. Some clients will report that, or the caregivers will report that there's a feeling like an aura where it just feels like everything kind of looks fuzzy. Another client reported that it feels like I just want to go inside the house. I feel like I have sunglasses on, and everything just feels really dark and really heavy. And so this is the time where if people are connected to communities of care, faith communities, can be really, really helpful and can make all the difference for somebody's life. But also there can be what I call the avalanche of good intentions, where people want to help, they want to do something, but they just don't know how. And so I have one client just recently reported that, man, they're always asking me, is there anything I can do? What do I need? What can I do? What do I need? I'm so tired of trying to answer these questions. And so there's real practical kind of things here. It's working with caregivers to really say, okay, well, let's why don't you feel like you can answer those questions? Well, I don't know what I need. Okay, well, let's start to kind of figure out, what do you need? Well, where's it more stressful during the week? Well, on Wednesday, I have to get Billy to piano, I have to get Sally to soccer, and it's really hard for me to make a meal. It's really difficult and really challenging. Okay, so you're saying that it would be really helpful if somebody would make a meal and bring it to you on Wednesday night. Yeah, okay, let's put that on the list. What else? Okay, on Tuesdays, there's this going on. Or, okay, so we get really practical. Okay, what do you need? So we list that out. And this is another game changer for folks, is you don't have to manage all of that. Appoint a point person. Get a point person who is a trusted friend and have everybody go to that person. And they're the ones who can field the questions, who can do whatever, and you're not having to field all the questions, but they are. And then they can say, hey, could you bring a meal on Wednesday night? Could you do this on Tuesday morning? And so again, it's very practical, but a lot of times these practical needs are become a significant burden if they're not dealt with. And so anyway, that's a significant help for people. But there are some downsides to faith communities sometimes. People sometimes just say shit that's not helpful. I mean, seriously, really, it becomes really challenging because often people are really pissed at God. And I just was working with a caregiver just this past month who, he would go to church and he said, man, I get so pissed when I go to church. And so we talked through that and like named that as like a really, that's an understandable response and reaction. And he did not want to go to Wednesday night Bible study. He didn't want to go. And I'm like, well, okay, well, why don't you want to go? Because I'm so tired of hearing people talk about God's blessings and God's faithfulness, even in the hard times. These people don't get it. They don't understand. And so worked with him to create some, again, cognitive flexibility on, well, do you have to go? Like, maybe try for a week or two. And what he ended up doing is he ended up taking his kids to youth group. He sat out in the lobby. He did some work, got some things done, got his kids and went home. He said, oh, it's great. It's awesome. So anyway, but this is where it is really, really important to find a community that really does get it and really does understand, that can make all the difference. And for me here in Middle Tennessee, Gilda's Club of Middle Tennessee is a fantastic resource for that. And I'm constantly referring clients to Gilda's Club, and they're coming back to me, telling me just how wonderful it is. So Christina Healy is here with Gilda's Club. Let's give her a hand. She's going to come share. She's going to come share about Gilda's Club and what they do. And she's got a table set up here in the back and would love to talk to anyone afterwards. So, Christina.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Rich, thank you for asking us to come. So Gilda's Club, has anyone here heard of Gilda's Club before? Raise of hands. Okay, that's a great amount. Yes, so for a reminder, for those of you who know, and for those of you who don't know, we are free cancer support for anyone impacted by cancer. So that includes the person with cancer, family members and caregivers, people who are post-treatment, and people who are bereaved. And so we're able to do that with a 5-prong program model. And so we do support groups. And so that includes like a weekly committed support group. And it also means like networking groups. So that is a little bit less of a commitment, but more so like based on diagnosis. We have a breast cancer support group, a colorectal support group, things like that. But then we also have like our weekly committed ones. So we have support groups, we have educational workshops, we have healthy lifestyle classes, we have information and resource referral, and then we have socials. We have fun social opportunities. Next week we have a bingo night, and I'm really excited about it. So through this, our mission really is we just want anyone impacted by cancer to get the support that they want and need in the way that just looks best for them. And it is all free of cost. It is all not only free in the sense that it is obviously no cost, but then it's also like we truly just listen to what our members want and need and find a way to get it on our program calendar. And so with that, people can come to any program they want. If they want to start with an orientation, like a new member session, they're welcome to do that. If they want to test the waters and come to an art class, that's fine too. They can truly do whatever's best for them. The only thing that is necessary for us to do a little bit of screening is one of our support groups, just because we want to make sure it's the best fit. But yeah, we are just happy to be here. We are right in Music City or Music Row, so right near all of the hospitals, a very quick drive. And all of our members, they can just come by if they maybe have a treatment in the morning and then another appointment in the afternoon. They don't want to go home. They can just come and hang out on one of our cozy, comfy couches and stay there for the day, do some crossword puzzles, just hang out and do what they need. That is about all I have. Is there any questions about Gilda's Club? Yeah. Yes, we do. We have children, teen, and family programming as well. Thank you so much. Yes. Correct. Yes, we have our weekly committed support groups for family members, and then also just some programs designated for them as well. Yes.
Y'all used to do, like if somebody had cancer, you would meet with like a couple of people that were gonna help support them to, arrange meals and stuff like that. Do you all still do that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, so that typically happens within the support groups and the networking groups, but if someone isn't connected into that group, we definitely have the capacity to be able to help arrange that. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, I will be in the back if you have any more. I have some great rack cards, my business cards as well. So please feel free to grab some and refer us to your people.
One of the things that children report is feeling very lost and kind of alone and not knowing how to navigate it. And one of the things with Gilda's Club, with their teen and kids programming, it's a huge asset if there's space made to be able to engage in that. And so it's a big deal. So Christina, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. All right. So, after months of treatment, it's time for scans. I found that the week of a scan, like the days before, are incredibly anxious for clients. And so trying to schedule with them like a day or two before a scan is really important, and also after is really important as well. So trying to get both of those together. And sometimes it's good news. And good news brings great relief, right? The tumors are shrinking, there is progress being made, okay, things are going well, or we're in remission. And that's great news. And we move to end of treatment. So if it is the best news, and there is remission, right? And there is a sense of like, oh, I can get back to my life now, and I can get back to normal. This journey doesn't leave you like you were before. Changes you significantly. And the percentage of recurrence can be significant. It depends on the type of cancer, when it was caught, the type of treatment, and also kind of your physical condition. But recurrence is always a thing. And so there's a fear that's always kind of there. Anytime there's kind of an ache or a pain or some kind of something doesn't feel right, clients typically go right back. What is this? Is this danger? Is this threat? And so, there's some resources in the area. The YMCA has a resource called After Breast Cancer, working with breast cancer survivors, again, for this very reason, because it never really goes away completely. It's always kind of there. And so the representative from the YMCA is here today, Dory Gorman. And so if you have questions about that, you can ask her, and now you can expense the lunch. Anyway, it also happens too that it's not good news. And when it's not good news, it can be devastating. And we have to reconfigure and figure out what is the path forward look like. But then the question comes up for some when they hear this. There's nothing more that we can do. And so what do you do then as a clinician? And again, this is accompaniment, this is maintaining, this is continuing rapport, all of that stuff. If that stuff has been established really well, you can just continue on providing that sense of support and comfort of being in the boat with them. I found Atul Gawande's book that came out several years ago called Being Mortal to be really, really helpful. He poses these questions to ask where there's a terminal diagnosis. What's your understanding of your illness at this stage? So this is really, really important, because what clients may understand and what the actual kind of prognosis is can be different. And so trying to understand where they're at, like how do they understand it? What's the meaning that they're making of this is really important. And then what are your goals and priorities? What outcomes are unacceptable to you? Meaning like, okay, what's the line? When you're like, okay, I'm done, it's enough. And what are you willing to sacrifice and not? And then probably the best question, I think, is what does a good day look like? So now we're back at the present moment, right? So if we've built that skill, present moment, it makes it easier, tough, but easier to come back to, okay, what does today look like? Given the limitations, given the situation, what does a good day look like? Cancer can be a brutal thief. It can rob clients of their dignity, identity, physical abilities. It can severely limit a life. It can affect an entire family in drastic ways. So cancer is a taker, and it can take a lot. So for me, as a therapist who's trying to look at, okay, like what's the opportunity here? Well, there's not many often, but it does give one thing, and the thing that it gives is clarity. And people tend to get real clear, real quick on what's truly important in their life and begin to orient their life around that. The spouse of a cancer patient told me just a few months ago, He said, look, I wouldn't wish this hell on anybody, but this clarity I wish for everybody. And it's just a shame that it takes something like this to get our attention. But at the end of the day, when it comes to being a therapist who works with cancer clients, I often go back to this quote from palliative care specialist B.J. Miller. He said this, the quote, don't just do something, sit there, is one that gets passed around the hospice, palliative medicine, and contemplative circles. It's simply a little play on words. It's such good advice, particularly in dealing with the throes of illness and caregiving. Truly, what is there to do in healing between people? Sure, there's stuff to be done. There's a task list. There's skills to learn. There's skill building. There's all this stuff, right? Etc. And we feel good doing these things and checking things off lists, and that's real enough. But ultimately, the bottom line, when it comes to healing in this world, it seems much more to do with someone bearing witness, with just being with someone in awkward silence or touch. These very basic things are where so much of the power is. And really, my experience is that this is the most important thing that we as therapists, counselors, psychologists can provide to our clients who are suffering through a cancer journey. Because where they're at and where we're at is really not all that different, because at the end of the day, we all just want to know that we're not alone. Thank you. All right, so we do have a few minutes for some questions, and also, like I said earlier, like this is just kind of one